Okay, it's the part-time trader. Great to be back with you. Today we're going to be taking a look at the altcoin market. And as many of you who have followed me here for a little while will know, I am super bearish on Bitcoin and equities over the next couple of years. But I've been saying for the last couple of weeks that there are positive signs that we are about to enter a very brief but very sweet period of altcoin outperformance. Today, I'm going to be talking you through how I plan to profit from that window and where I see the biggest gains being racked up across the cryptocurrency space. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stay tuned over the next 20 to 30 minutes. A brief reminder before I dig into the charts that nothing you hear on this channel constitutes financial advice. Please do not make investment decisions off the back of a random anonymous guy that you come across on YouTube. But if you find any of this interesting, entertaining, informative, useful to you as you shape your view on the market, then please do hit the subscribe button and press like. I massively appreciate all the support that I've been getting on the channel in recent months, and I hope that you can help me to grow it so I can bring you more of this content in the future. Right, let's make a start. So this is total 3. This is cryptocurrency as a whole, so the entire cryptocurrency market minus BTC and ETH. So really taking the two biggest players in the space out of the game. This is what the chart looks like, and this is a monthly chart, so each one of these candles represents a month's worth of price action. And as you can see, I really like the look of this because the chart is so clean. So first of all, we've got this lower boundary here, which as you can see has been supporting price way back since 2017, and every time we've dipped into this trend line support, price has bounced. And then we've got this upper trend line, which hasn't been hit for a long time, since 2021, but each time it has been hit has capped price. And so what I'm expecting here, I think the fact that we are pushing back off of this trend line support, the fact that we are reapproaching these all-time highs that were put back in 2021, I think there are signs, and I'll come on to some more of these signs in a minute, that we are about to see a very brief window, and I suspect that window might literally last perhaps a month or two, something akin to what we saw here in late 2020 and late 2017. I believe that we are about to get a big burst to the upside, and that move will be pretty significant. So look, I'm expecting this move to be in the region of about 250 to 300%. I think it will be short-lived, and what follows will be a complete and utter collapse. And for more on why I see that collapse coming, take a look at some of my previous videos where I outline the risks that I see in the bond market, in the global debt market, and the impact that is likely to have on equities, in my view, over the next couple of years, signaled by the longest and deepest period of yield curve inversion coming to an end. And as the yield curve disinverts, I've pointed to lots of historical examples where as that happens, we see really significant corrections in the stock market. So I believe that the NASDAQ is in the process of putting in a major top, and that in the months to come, we are going to see equities trading much, much lower. And I expect the same will be true of Bitcoin. But in the interim, over the next literally 6 to 8 weeks, I think there is a sweet spot where altcoins can run as Bitcoin goes sideways. And the question for me is which altcoins will benefit the most in this period of upside that I'm projecting here before this massive rising wedge gives way to the downside and price collapses in a way that nobody other than myself is forecasting to happen. So that's the total 3 market cap, which I believe has a lot of upside left in it over the coming weeks. And here's another sign that we're about to hit that sweet spot for altcoins, and this is total 3 versus BTC. So this is the entire cryptocurrency market minus BTC and ETH divided by the price of Bitcoin. And you can see that in these periods here where this runs hard, that is what we traditionally would call alt season. So from the bottom of this dip here in early 2021, late 2020, we saw a period of about 6 months of astronomical gains on altcoins versus Bitcoin. And here I'm kind of seeing this almost as one big range, where the range is capped up here, and we've got a sort of mid-range here and a range low down here. And so what I'm expecting to happen is for price to come back up to these highs here once this descending broadening wedge breaks. And the fact, look, I've talked endlessly in recent months about the descending broadening wedge being one of my favorite patterns. For me, it's got a really high hit rate. You know, often you get patterns that fail, that morph into something else. But when you see something as clean as this, where you see price painting this sort of descending broadening wedge on a higher time frame, and this is a 2-week chart, so this wedge goes all the way back to mid 2023, so 2 years worth of price action where price has consistently traded between these two trend lines here, falling back into and finding support on this support and resistance zone. I think there's so much confluence here for price to just push off in a big way and head up quite significantly. And I think this move alone, and this is just the rate at which some of the altcoin market will move against BTC and ETH. I think we're looking at a move of about 120, 130%. Add into that, if Ethereum starts to move, if Bitcoin sees a little bit of upside over the next few weeks, and I certainly don't expect it to go, you know, to 200, 300, 400k as some people are projecting, but I could see a move for Bitcoin back into the 130, 135k region, put in an all-time high before pulling back and everything rolls over. So, you know, for me, I think there are significant signs that the altcoin market is about to move. And another one of those signs is on this chart here, which is Ethereum. Now, you guys know, if you've been following me for a while, and I know people think I'm crazy for this, but my long-term Ethereum targets, the first is down here at the $370 region, $360. I do believe we're going to come back to retest this at some stage. These are some stretch targets, and it really depends for me how low we go. It depends on where the market tops out. But what I think is really interesting with Ethereum is that you've got these highs here which never got taken, and although I have been bearish on Ethereum for a long time, I remember back here suggesting that these highs might get taken at some stage, and that if we flipped 2,800, that would be a sign for me that price is going to push much higher. And I flipped long on the market as we started to get daily closes over 2,800, and since then Ethereum has been absolutely booming. And I just cannot see, given that Ethereum has come all the way back up to these highs and is consolidating under these highs, I cannot see a world in which we don't at least take them. And I think given that the price has bounced so hard from this capitulation back in March to come all the way back to the highs, I think we're going to take them in a big way. And I think eventually we're going to take the all-time high. And how far Ethereum goes really depends on what happens with ETH BTC. And I mentioned last week that I think there are two scenarios for ETH BTC. One of them looks like this, where we see a push back into this downward trend that has been in place since 2022, a rejection, and then price comes back and takes out the lows, some consolidation before we eventually break it. But the scenario that I like most at the moment is that this just keeps on stretching price to the upside, that we come back up to take out the highs at this level here at what is about 0.087, 0.09. And interestingly, if Bitcoin is up in the $120 to $130 region and this comes into 0.09, we're looking at Ethereum being priced out at about 10 to 11 grand at that point. So, you know, even though Ethereum has had a really good run and is pressing back up against that resistance at $4,000, I still think there is reason to believe that if this downtrend breaks here, that ETH BTC is going to outperform to such an extent that Ethereum could get pushed into the $10,000 region. And if that happens, then looking at my targets, I think these would probably be out of the question. But I honestly can see, and I've covered this in lots of videos, I can see that if the stock market rolls over and we get a decline of, say, 60, 70% in the NASDAQ, I think crypto is going to get absolutely obliterated, and a pullback from $10,000 into this SR zone here at about $350 would not surprise me in the slightest. But look, for now, we don't need to worry about that. I am focused purely on my longs right now. Ethereum is not a coin that I've gone long on. I missed the bottom here. I did predict that once we cleared 2,800, we'd go higher. But given how much of the move has already elapsed, I believe there are better, stronger gains to be made elsewhere. And I'll talk you through in a moment where I am placing my bets at the moment. But that is Ethereum. And again, going back to this confluence that I'm seeing across Total 3 versus BTC, and the ETH BTC chart, predicting if we break this, certainly that there will be another 2x from about this level left in ETH BTC before it starts to top out. All of that gives me confidence that we are about to see a period of strong altcoin performance. And you guys will know that one of the altcoins that I like the look of the most at the moment, and one of the longs that I've taken, is Dogecoin. And the reason for that is that while ETH has been really, really strong in recent weeks, what we've seen is a relatively small breakout on Doge from this descending broadening wedge that you can see here. So we broke this downtrend, we came back and we retested it at the weekend. We flipped, if we look at the 3-day, we flipped this SR zone here at 20 cents into support, and price has started to push up in quite a big way this week. I mean, it's been, you know, look at the kind of gains that we've had this week, 13% on Dogecoin, not to be sniffed at. And I believe price is going to go much, much higher. I think at some stage in the next couple of months, we're going to come back in to test the upper boundary of what looks like a sort of big broadening ascending wedge, which ultimately will be a bearish pattern. But between here and the top, I think there's a good 300-400%, possibly even 500 or 600%. If we get a move into the 1.2 region, I think that takes us up by close to 500%, which is a massive, massive move, right? And I know everybody is dreaming of the kind of alt season that delivers 20, 30, 40x. I don't believe that's what we're about to see. You know, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that we are about to see the kind of influx of capital that will drive some of these really established coins up, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50x, which is what we got in 2020, 2021. But I still believe that there could be some really significant gains on the table. And Doge is one of the coins that I like the look of the most. Another one that I really like and that I've been mocked for turning bullish on X is Chainlink. And if I just pull back to the weekly, you know, for me, the first sign, you guys know how much I love a descending broadening wedge. I think we have seen a breakout of that back in early July. I said last week that a lot of the dips that we got were for buying, and we did get a pullback. We've already engulfed that on the weekly, and again, this one's up by 20% already. It's an early runner, and that kind of early strength is always a good sign if you're long. I think there are a couple of targets for me. One, I'd be looking at a flip of this level at about the $21, $22 range, and that creates, I think for me, a really promising long from $21, $22 up to the highs at $50, and potentially we'll take these and press a bit higher, maybe up into the $60 region. I think as these highs get taken, I would be looking to get out of longs personally. But I like this structure here. You know, we saw this big long consolidation, a break of the downtrend, a retest here, and then look, price hasn't done anything life-changing to date. You know, we came back off these lows at $6. We hit the highs at 20, and we've largely, with a fair bit of volatility, we've just been consolidating since then. So for the best part of a year and a half, price has not really done anything dramatic or really impactful. But I think there are signs now that we're about to get the breakout back to the highs. And this looks like a really good long for me. And, you know, I'm not here to give anyone financial advice, but the only thing I would say is just go careful on the leverage, guys, if you are trading these things. Crypto is incredibly volatile, and I've seen moves where you can get a 10% down candle in the space of an hour. and you don't want to be on the other side of that. If you are long, 5, 10, 20x, it will leave you making poor decisions and potentially losing all your money. So just, even though I think the market has a lot of upside potential here, I'm still being very cautious not to over leverage, to be sensible about entries, and also to time my exits well, because I do think that when this all starts to roll over, eventually I think we are going to see a proper cataclysm in the cryptocurrency market. So that's Chainlink. What I wanted to touch on a little bit, just to wrap up the last few charts, is that I don't think all altcoins are going to be the same during this move up. So while I'm really bullish on Doge and Chainlink, and even if I just pull up very quickly, LTC is another one that I'm very bullish on at the moment. And if we flick to the monthly, you can see here that we've had this huge consolidation period for the last couple of years. We saw a false breakout here, and I did think the market had probably topped out, but what we've seen since is some strength that's come back into the Litecoin market and has seen price push back up above these range highs. And I believe we're going to go and take out the all-time high and probably push as high as $450, $500 for Litecoin. And that's no small move. I mean, we've seen some of it already, but if that plays out, we're talking about something like 250, 300% returns on Litecoin over the next 6 to 8 weeks. So there are definitely some examples I see in the market of coins that are about to outperform Bitcoin in a really big way. But there are also signs that this move is not going to be universal. And one of those is this chart here. So this is others versus Bitcoin. So the others are small cap coins that sit outside of the top 50, top 100, I think it might be, in terms of overall market cap in the crypto space. And there are a couple of worrying things in this chart for me. The first is we've got this really clear SR zone here, and as you can see, price has reacted from this SR zone repeatedly. We got a small deviation here before the COVID crash, and the moment price started to close back under, others versus Bitcoin dipped really significantly. Then we got the big move up, but price eventually came back to retest this SR level here. And now what's happened is that price has broken under. And I think the worrying sign, if you're holding some of these smaller altcoins, is that at the moment, price would have a lot to do if it was going to flip bullish. So the signs that I would be looking for if we were truly entering the kind of alt season that we got back in 2021, first of all, I'd need to see a reclaim of this SR zone here. And second of all, I'd have to see a break of this big downtrend that you can see, which has rejected price consistently since the highs of early 2022. And for me, that feels unlikely. Add to that the fact that we've seen a break of this uptrend, which has supported price for quite some time, dating back to 2019. I just think there are signs that low cap alts are not going to get the kind of moves that we might see in some of these older dinosaur projects, as they're sometimes called, things like Litecoin, Ethereum, Doge. I just think if you're holding really small cap alts, just be careful about your expectations, because while I do think we could come back in and retest this area here, potentially even come back to the upper boundary of this downward channel, I think we've got a long period of decline and ultimately consolidation ahead for low cap alts versus the price of Bitcoin. And here are a couple of examples that I see that help me point to why not everything is going to go up equally. We're not going to get the kind of universal alt season that we might have seen in years gone by. The first of those is this AVAX chart. So while this is not a small cap altcoin, it's actually one of the bigger, more established projects in the space. To me, the price action on this just looks so clean. I would be really surprised if we don't come back and retest the lower boundary of this. And so there's a couple of things that I'm looking for. First of all, this level here appears so clean as support, 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 and then broken support I do expect us to come back and retest the underside of this at some stage, which would potentially cap price action before Bitcoin AVAX rolls over versus Bitcoin and continues in what I'm seeing as a sort of macro consolidation, with obviously a huge drawdown before the really big move up, which I believe will start in 2027 when we bottom down here. So again, the simple message is altcoins, I think, are about to do really well, but just be careful about what you're holding, because if your expectation is that everything is going to go up multiples in the next few weeks, I think you're going to be disappointed. I think the market is a lot trickier to time now. We don't see the kind of universal moves that we might have seen in years gone by. And you've got to be smart, and you've got to read the charts, and you've got to be selective about where you're investing if you want to catch some of those big moves. Now, it's possible that maybe AVAX does run back to the upper boundary of this descending broadening wedge here. I think that's unlikely, but even if that were to happen, you know, we're talking about 150% move, whereas I'm projecting on some of these that we might see gains in the region of 3 to 450, 500% on some of these altcoins, Doge being the one that I'm most bullish on. So just be careful not to get too greedy at the wrong time. I still believe some of these alts versus Bitcoin are in huge consolidation periods before the overall market bottoms in 2027, post the crash that I see coming in equities, which will give us some incredible life-changing opportunities on some of these coins. I feel pretty confident about AVAX being a massive winner over the long run, but despite, you know, what I'm saying about really short-term incredible gains to be had in the altcoin market, I don't believe that in the short term something like AVAX is going to go on a massive run. I still think it has a long drawn out period of consolidation versus Bitcoin before it goes anywhere significant. And just to wrap up, there's one other chart which is not something I've covered here on YouTube before, but it's something I've chucked out on X. Now, I know NANO is a funny one, right? This coin, lots of people will see it as a dinosaur, completely irrelevant in the space, and I don't blame them. I mean, look, from the high that we made in early 2018 against Bitcoin to where we are today, this coin is down like 99.71%. But I do think NANO has some really strong fundamentals behind it, and eventually this coin is going to have its moment in the sun. It's going to have a period of huge expansion. But this chart here is so clean, you know, this NANO versus Bitcoin chart, that I just cannot see that moment happening anytime soon. Two things worry me. One is we've not revisited the lower boundary of this descending channel yet. And I do believe, looking at the way that price is structured at the moment, I do believe that will happen at some point in 2026, 2027, before we see a major bottom versus Bitcoin. The other thing that worries me is there are two really key, very clean areas of monthly support and resistance. The first is this here, which was flipped into resistance in 2023 and price got rejected. And I said at the time that that would lead to more downside. And the second is here, where, as you can see, we've had resistance, support, but we've lost it. And now on the monthly time frame, we are seeing price holding this level as resistance now. And I suspect we could see over the next few weeks a move versus Bitcoin that looks like this, that we would come back into this SR zone and ultimately get rejected. And that would remind me a little bit of what we saw back here in late 2023, where price had been rejected from the SR zone and then had one final push up to retest it before rolling over and continuing its complete bleed against Bitcoin. And I think we're probably going to see something similar, maybe a nice run of 80, 100% for NANO over the coming weeks versus Bitcoin. But ultimately, guys, you know, this is just another example, and I know lots of people are not interested in NANO. For me personally, it's a bit of a passion project and one that I expect to do really well over the next 10 years or so. But for now, there's absolutely no signs that this is ready for a breakout versus Bitcoin. And so people that will call for alt season in the way that they expect the kind of gains that we had in 2021 and 2017, 18, I just think they're going to be massively disappointed. So I suppose, for me, I am choosing wisely. I'm finding charts and projects that look technically as though they are due for a big upside and a big breakout. Doge is my favorite of those, but you can also, you can see charts like the Litecoin chart and even Ethereum, where I think we're going to see a big move versus BTC still. There are lots and lots of examples out there of coins that look good, but then there are lots of examples of coins that don't really look primed for a big move versus Bitcoin yet. So, key message from me is that I'm choosing wisely. I'm being really cautious about where I stick my money to maximize my gains over the next couple of months. And I am also, going to be really, really cautious about where I take profits. I don't think this is the time to be greedy. If we get some of these moves, I will not be holding after about $1 on Dogecoin. Lots of people at the time will be calling for Doge to go to 10, 50, $100. You'll see all the crazy price targets. I believe that's probably the point where we should be taking profits and worrying about the huge decline that I see coming in the sort of back end of the year all the way into 2027. So if you want to see some of the background to this, if you want to see some of my Bitcoin charts and what I'm predicting will happen in the equity markets, then please do go back to some of my previous videos. But I hope some of this has been useful, entertaining. Like I say, please do hit the subscribe button. It's great to have you on board. I hope to bring you more content in the coming weeks. If you've got any requests for charts, then please do drop them in the comment section. And if you haven't already, please do head over to X and follow me through @PartTimeCharts, where you'll get more frequent, hopefully daily content from me. That's where I post a lot of my ideas and share a lot of my thinking on the market. Have a great weekend when it arrives, and thanks for being with me again. I will speak to you guys soon.